Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. For generations, the default model of learning in American education has operated on a foundational, yet largely unexamined premise that knowledge is an abstract, self-contained substance that can be poured into a student's brain, stored there like files on a hard drive, and retrieved later for use. This dominant perspective, often rooted in traditional cognitive psychology, pictures the learner as a solo processor, diligently taking notes, memorizing facts, and hitting the books in isolation. The classroom, under this model, often serves as a sterile holding tank, a place where decontextualized facts are transmitted, tested, and hopefully transferred to the real world later. However, anyone who has ever truly mastered a complex skill, be it playing a musical instrument, coding a software application, or successfully navigating a messy, real-world work problem, knows that this inert, abstract view of learning simply doesn't cut the mustard. The ability to ace a multiple-choice test on geometry rarely translates seamlessly into the ability to frame a roof, and an essay summarizing the steps of the scientific method doesn't mean a student can actually design a robust experiment. There's a persistent, frustrating gap between knowing and doing. Enter the situated cognition theory, SCT. Emerging forcefully in the late 1980s and early 1990s, SCT flipped the script, offering a radical and compelling counter-argument. Simply put, SCT posits that all genuine knowing and thinking are inextricably linked to the context, activity, and culture in which they occur. It declares that cognition is not a discrete event happening only inside the mind. Rather, it is a dynamic interaction among the individual, their social group, and the tools and environment they are using. Knowledge, under this framework, is not a thing to be acquired, but a practice to be mastered. We will delve deep into the situated cognition theory, laying out its philosophical roots, dissecting its core tenets, and exploring its revolutionary implications for modern educational practice, from curriculum design and pedagogy to assessment. Ultimately, we will argue that embracing SCT is not merely an optional reform, but a crucial necessity for preparing students to succeed in a complex, rapidly evolving world that demands adaptable practice, not just inert knowledge. To fully appreciate the power of situated cognition, one must first understand what it was reacting against. The mid-20th century saw the rise of the cognitive revolution, which often employed the mind as computer metaphor. This model viewed the brain as an information processing system: input, data, processing, internal cognitive algorithms, and output, a behavior or answer. Learning was seen as the successful encoding, storage, and retrieval of symbolic representations disconnected from the environment. The classic classroom, with its rows of desks, silent tests, and focus on abstract definitions, is the architectural embodiment of this decontextualized cognitivism. Situated cognition theory, along with related theories like distributed cognition and embodied cognition, challenge this clean separation between mind and world, labeling it the fallacy of independence. The intellectual foundation of SCT is not entirely new. It stands on the sturdy shoulders of prior groundbreaking thinkers. 1. Lev Vygotsky and sociocultural theory. The most significant precursor is the Soviet psychologist Lev Vygotsky. His central argument was that human mental functions are inherently socioculturally mediated. Vygotsky argued that tools, like language, number systems, and computers, and social interaction are the primary drivers of cognitive development. Thinking is internalized conversation, and learning first occurs on the social plane before it is internalized on the individual plane. This concept perfectly aligns with the situated view, as it places the learning activity firmly within a cultural, tool-laden context. The crucial Vygotskian concept of the zone of proximal development, ZPD, what a learner can do with help, is essentially a description of learning as a shared, scaffolded, and thus situated activity. 2. Lev and Wenger's communities of practice. Perhaps the most direct articulation of SCT came from anthropologist Jean Lev and educational theorist Etienne Wenger in their seminal 1991 work, Situated Learning, Legitimate Peripheral Participation. Wenger argued that learning is fundamentally about becoming a member of a community of practice, COP. Whether the COP is a group of old-time tailors, a team of nurses, or a classroom of aspiring historians, learning is the process of moving from the periphery, newcomer, toward the center, master practitioner of that community. The core mechanism they identified is legitimate peripheral participation, LPP. This means the newcomer is granted legitimate access to the practice. They are accepted as a member, while only engaging in peripheral, low-stakes, manageable tasks. A new apprentice baker might only sweep the floor and weigh flour, but by being present, watching, listening, and handling the tools, they are learning the culture, the language, and the rhythm of the bakery. The learning is situated entirely within the activity of being a baker. SCT takes this powerful idea and applies the whole shebang to the formal education system. The rejection of the computer metaphor and the embrace of sociocultural and anthropological perspectives marks SCT as a true paradigm shift. It doesn't just tweak instruction, it changes the very definition of what it means to know something. Situated cognition theory hinges on the concept of inseparability. It asserts that knowledge cannot be distilled into pure abstract facts because the context, the activity, and the culture provide the essential meaning that allows the knowledge to function. We can break down the core tenets into three interconnected pillars. Pillar 1. Context is key. Knowledge is situated. The term situated is the heavy lifting word here. It means that knowledge is not portable and static. It is indexical, meaning its relevance and use are indexed to the specific circumstances. A classic, simple example helps illustrate this. Consider the mathematical concept of a ratio. A student might earn an A+ on a quiz defining and calculating abstract ratios. But when put into an authentic situation, say, needing to mix concrete on a job site using a 3:1 ratio of gravel, sand, and cement, the student often freezes. The context of the noisy, dusty construction site, the physical act of shoveling, the social interaction of coordinating with teammates, and the goal of making a structurally sound mixture all change the nature of the mathematical problem. The math is not inert. It is a tool for concrete mixing. When a student fails to transfer the knowledge, SCT doesn't blame the student. It blames the instruction, which taught the tool in isolation from its practical, situated use. The argument is that when we strip knowledge of its context, e.g., teaching physics formulas purely on a chalkboard, we transform it into inert knowledge, knowledge that the student possesses but cannot activate or deploy when the real-world situation calls for it. True knowledge, according to SCT, is knowing when, where, and why to deploy a concept, not just what the concept is. Pillar 2. Learning is doing, the primacy of activity in SCT. Learning is not passive reception, it is active participation. The theory emphasizes activity theory, which views human action as goal-directed, mediated by tools, and shaped by the community. To learn a skill is to engage in the authentic activities of that skill's practitioner. This is where the term authentic activity becomes critical. An authentic activity is one that is common to the actual daily practices of a community. For instance, an inauthentic activity in a history class might be memorizing dates for a timeline test. An authentic activity would be analyzing a set of primary source documents to construct a persuasive historical argument for a public audience. This requires students to engage in the practice of history, researching, source analysis, evidence-based argumentation, not just the recall of facts about history. This focus aligns perfectly with the American idiom of putting in the elbow grease. Learning requires action, effort, and engagement with the tasks that define the discipline. When students are engaged in authentic activities, their minds and bodies are operating as a functional unit, tackling problems that truly matter within the mini-culture of the classroom. Pillar 3. Learning is social, the community of practice, COP. The final indispensable pillar is the social and cultural dimension. Situated cognition holds that learning is inherently social. Even seemingly individual thought is scaffolded by language, cultural tools, and past interactions. As established by Lave and Wenger, the community of practice, COP, is the primary site of learning. The COP provides the shared language, the normative behaviors, the valued goals, and the historical context for the learning. For a classroom to be truly situated, it must transform from an aggregation of individual students into a COP of learners who share a common purpose to become better thinkers, writers, scientists, or engineers. In a healthy educational COP, 1. Shared goals. Everyone is working toward a collective outcome. Example, solving a complex design challenge. 2. Shared language. Students adopt the technical vocabulary of the domain. Example, using hypothesis, variable, and data analysis correctly, not just defining them. 3. Mutual engagement. Expertise is distributed. Students don't just rely on the teacher. They rely on each other. The whole group is all in this together. 4. Legitimate peripheral participation, LPP. New students are eased into the practice, starting with simple tasks and observing the old hands, the teacher and more advanced peers, until they can take on more central responsibilities. This social process is what drives the internalization of skill. In essence, SCT tells us that we don't just learn from the community, we learn how to be part of the community.